Do you think, Simon, one of the biggest winners in this window will prove to be the ever-improving Brighton and Hove Albion? Because of the fact they've held on to Moises Caicedo, they'll probably need to increase his weekly wage in the process. But Caicedo, for one, thought he was out of there. He wanted out of there by the looks of it, by what he posted on social media. Now he stays. He's crucial to what De Zerbi wants. And Brighton have kept a key player. Well, Brighton win on so many fronts, don't they? Because they've got a manager that's very articulate, albeit the language is his second language, but you get the message from him very clearly what his expectations of Brighton are. I don't think it was ideal for the player to go into social media. I don't think that's what Brighton would have wanted to have seen. No. And I suspect it's not a case of if the player leaves, it's when. Yeah. And whether there's going to be any more juice in this particular deal to make it even more rewarding for Brighton. But what you've got is a football club. I sat there and I watched with great glee Brighton playing at the Withdean Grange and using their boardroom, a scout hut as a boardroom, and watching Dick Knight struggle with this Brighton football club because it was in disarray. And then Tony Bloom has rebuilt this football club to a remarkable level. You're a huge admirer of his, right? Well, you can't not be. I mean, Tony has been prepared to take on a huge amount of financial risk to himself. He may have a huge amount of money, but don't be under any illusion that people just want to splatter it around. We can't all walk around being as gormless as Fahid Mashiri. And the point is, he's built a football stadium, he's built a football club that's competing, and most of it's right. And the recruitment policies, people will say, what a wonderful blueprint. Buy very cheaply and sell very high. Well, that's an ideal world. I just think good recruitment is good recruitment and good management decisions are good management decisions. Yeah. It isn't that difficult. People that can't do jobs very well make it more complicated.
Can they sustain it? And listen, I'm full of admiration for what Tony Bloom has done at Brighton, but it wasn't that long ago we were talking about Southampton in the same terms, having the ability to sell players for profit and still replenish the squad. Does it catch up with you in the end? Well, I think you've got to look at the ownership model. I mean, it doesn't go on forever. Tony doesn't go on forever. There is still an ask on Tony. There's still a requirement for Tony to step into the breach every now and again. And I think he's done more than enough for that football club to warrant a back seat. But the debate was being had this morning. And again, Kelvin Maguire was talking this morning about the ambition that Tony will have to have gotten this side from where it came from to Europe will be all his dreams come together and all his Christmases come at once. I think he's a little bit less sentimental than that. I think he's sentimental but also pragmatic in his thinking as well. But what you've got is, good people do good jobs, Jim. And this idea that it's you need to be in Harry Potter to be able to make things happen is nonsense. Just good, thorough people being professional at what they do. Yeah. And they've been good in their recruitment, they've been good in their management, and they've been good at their ownership. And all of those things come to pass. Now, it's a moment in time. Do I think Brighton can sustain this? I think it's unlikely that Brighton can sustain this level. But notwithstanding that, people will say that's because you've got a Crystal Palace bias. I just think the reality of it is when the powerhouses kick back up a notch and Liverpool and Chelsea reacquaint themselves with what it takes to be Liverpool and Chelsea, those two clubs will feature back in the top six and the balance will change again. In the last few moments, Alex, you probably noticed this as well while Simon was talking there. John Joe Shelvey confirmed to Nottingham Forest. What's the nature of that deal? Shelvey tonight was actually paraded on the pitch at St James's Park and got a terrific send-off with the arrival of the other two players. So Shelvey now leaves Newcastle and heads to Nottingham Forest. I think it's a 2.5-year contract, which by all accounts was more than perhaps he was hoping for at Nottingham Forest. Good addition. I think someone who knows his way around the Premier League. No, Simon's not entirely convinced. I don't think he's got any legs left. I think he can pass a good ball, but I think actually his injury at the beginning of the season did Eddie Howe a favour because I think he might have had a challenge in the dressing room because I think they'd moved on from John Joe Shelvey. And it's nice that he got a send-off from the Newcastle fans. It's nice there's an elegance about allowing players to leave and get some appreciation from the fans. Yeah. But I actually think Shelvey, because I remember in an article in the paper, Shelvey sitting on an exercise bike saying how fit and ready he was for this season. Bang, next thing he's injured. And without being mean-spirited, I think he solved a problem that Eddie Howe probably wasn't going to play him anyway. Very possibly. Manchester United have one more hour to play with to get Marcel Sabitzer over the line. Of course, the Austrian midfielder being brought in. This was an eye-opener in the course of the day today. Alex, we hadn't heard his name being mentioned before. Then all of a sudden, he was the number one trending name here in the UK on social media. And it's the same situation for the one we've been talking about all the time. Enzo Fernandez from Benfica to Chelsea. Chelsea have got an extension as well. A 1 hour extension to get the paperwork done. So Alex, these two big names seemingly will get done and seemingly will get on their way to being completed in the next hour. So a bit of breathing space for both of these clubs to get there. And again, I stress, I think that's logical.
allowing them to get those deals over the line.
I think the Manchester United deal for Sabitzer was a bit more relaxed anyway. Certainly, I don't think negotiations were as tense as we've seen between Chelsea and Benfica. But you're right, it just makes sense if teams have got so far with deals for the sake of an hour. Let's get this done. We want the best players in the Premier League after all. Manchester United's transfer window is fascinating. Wout Weghorst on loan, Jack Butland as a backup goalkeeper on loan, and now Marcel Sabitzer on loan. If this had happened a year ago when Wreck-It Ralph was in charge of the football team, Manchester United fans would be in uproar. But because of Erik Ten Hag and the credit that he's built up, United fans are quite happy. They've only signed 3 players on loan.
I'll tell you one thing, people are not spending a lot of time debating about what Chelsea's doing. They spend a lot of time debating about how they're getting around financial fair play. They're not spending a lot of time suggesting how much they've spent for these players and are these players actually worth this kind of dough.
Yeah. Simon, just the one name, if you're a Liverpool fan, just the one name. I saw Erik, a van driver, say a moment ago, anybody sees a top player in London, drive him up to Anfield for me tonight, would you? And that name is Cody Gakpo, of course, from PSV Eindhoven, who joined earlier in this window for 37 million quid. Wonder how Klopp and Liverpool will be feeling tonight. I wonder how Liverpool fans will be feeling tonight, having come up short this season. Of course, by their own extremely high standards, and just one over the line.
Well, I think if we are led to believe what we're led to believe, all their energies and economic resources are going to be deployed in trying to sign Jude Bellingham in the summer. Now, some would argue that they need a lot more than that, but I think he's a massive part of the regeneration that Liverpool clearly need. Lots been made about how Liverpool are this season and the reasons why they are the way they are, and you can't give Klopp a pass for that, because ultimately the level of players have been playing at, if they're not good enough to be able to compete at the way that Klopp does, they should have been able to identify this earlier.
Do they not need to be top 4 to get the likes of Bellingham over the line?
I think Liverpool have a uniqueness about them, so does Klopp, because what they've achieved in recent years and the way that they've played, arguably for me, and people won't like it, and certainly Man City fans won't like it, the team that I've always wanted to watch is Liverpool, because they're so feral, they're so dynamic, they're so explosive. I understand that Man City are a beautiful work of art and that watching football being played by Man City is a pleasure, but there's something more dynamic about Liverpool, so I've enjoyed watching them more than I have watched Man City, and that will also reverberate with certain players. I think if Klopp kicks into gear and the board kick into gear around Bellingham and a few others, then Liverpool will be back in good nick. Now, I know what you're saying, which is if they don't get top 4, how do they sell out to Bellingham? I think Liverpool Football Club sells itself to some extent.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.